Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 10 books that I read in January, which is genuinely crazy for me. Like the past few months I'd say I've been floating between like 3 to 6 books. I don't usually read this many, but I just had a great reading month and I read some amazing books in here, which I think is why I was on this little like streak to keep going. So I'm really excited to tell you guys what I read. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, what your thoughts were on them, if you have any similar recommendations, and also what your favourite books were in January. So the first book I read of 2025 was actually One Dark Window by Rachel Gellig. This book has been on my TBR genuinely for so long that I think it was getting to the point where it was like intimidating me, but I was like, am I ever going to read this book? Because I think I had heard such good things about it that it made me like nervous to read it, because I really did not know what the story was about. I just heard that people were obsessed with it and I was like, am I gonna like this? Like I wasn't really sure what to expect. I did kind of go into this blind, but I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.75 stars just because I think I need the second book in the series to like complete the picture for me. It is kind of like a gothic fantasy. I'd say it's much more like cozy fantasy than like Throne of Glass, like action fantasy, which I honestly prefer a lot of the time. So I think I was just really like enjoying following along with the story and just kind of like getting into the world. I'm definitely looking forward to reading the second book in the series. Okay, then we had a dark romance book, which was the second book I read in January, and this was God of Malice by Rena Kent. So I know that this series is like beloved by a lot of people and I've heard a lot of good things about it, especially from people who say that they don't typically like dark romances. So I was like, I'm gonna give this a go. I did really enjoy it. It was kind of like enemies to lovers. I feel like most dark romances are like enemies to lovers, college romance. It was honestly thorough but enjoyable, but nothing special. Like it did what a dark romance does. It was a quick, easy read, thorough, but like enjoyable, a palate cleanser almost. I gave this a 3 stars just because out of the other dark romance books I've read, it wasn't like life-changing, but I would definitely still recommend it. What I will say about it though is I really enjoyed like the topic of him as not just a morally grey character, but like a morally black character. Like our main male character, like he is like a diagnosed, or was he diagnosed, but like self-diagnosed psychopath, and I thought that was just really interesting to explore the fact that like she wasn't like making him soft or anything, or like, you know, changing him or fixing him. It was genuinely just like, I don't know, it made it quite fascinating, so I did really enjoy that element of it as well. Then I read another absolutely cooked Kindle Unlimited book, and this was a cowboy romance, and this was Braving the Storm by Elliot Rose. I unfortunately loved it. Elliot Rose is just such a good writer that like it was like Haunting Adeline, where I was like, I want to hate this, but the story is so good, like I'm actually invested. That was 100% how I felt with this book. I loved the first book in the series, Chasing the Wild, as well. That was incredible. And I just feel like the way she writes characters and like creates these situations, you're just on the edge of your seat. It's not even just like you want the characters to be together just because it's like forbidden or whatever, like just for entertainment. Even in these absolutely cooked situations, she genuinely writes the characters in a way where you are rooting for them. Like they are soulmates. I'm so sorry, I ate it up. And I feel like if you have finished Chestnut Springs and you're like, right, I'm ready to graduate, I'm ready for something even more thorough, I would recommend this series. I think it's the Devil's Peak series. I could be making that up out of thin air. Elliot Rose's writing, she's become a new favourite author of mine. I just love it. I love this book and I am so excited for the following book to come out. I did give this a 4.5 stars, unfortunately. Then we read one of my favourite books of the month, and this is Born for This by Caitlin Devlin. Now this is an advanced copy of this book. The book doesn't come out until I think it's like the second week in February, and I cannot recommend this enough to you guys. Genuinely, like please go out and get your hands on this when it does come out. If you loved either Daisy Jones and the Six or The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, This is like a mix of both of them, and it is just done so well. This basically follows Harley, who is a nepo baby. Her aunt is basically a famous worldwide actress, and she also has a bit of a mysterious, scandalous past that no one really knows what actually happened. When Harley finds out that they are doing a biopic on her aunt, she is like, I want to play her in the movie. And she basically meets her aunt for the first time, and it's told from Harley's point of view, but you get like the parallels between chapters of Harley and what Harley's going through and Harley's perception and interactions with Rachel, and then you have Rachel's side of the story, which is told through old diary entries of the things she went through as they happened. It's so funny to see like the parallels between Rachel and Harley's lives, but also to see, you know, kind of the way Rachel tells Harley a story versus how it actually happened, told by her diaries. Loved it, cannot recommend enough. I give this a 4.25 stars. I love this so much. This was just a brilliant book. So after Born for this being just such a slay, we just needed like a little palette cleanser in between. So I picked up the next book in the Devil's Peak series, and this was Bouquets and something. I actually cannot remember what that was called, but it was essentially a little novella. Comes after Braving the Storm. It was also a Christmas novella, which I didn't even realise when I picked it up. It was fine. It was a 3 stars. Like it was just a novella, but once again, really enjoy that author's writing, so like I did enjoy it, but there's absolutely nothing to say on it. It was just a silly little novella. But then after that, we read my favourite book of the month and my first 5-star book of the year, and that is of course none other than Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. Guys, like if I start talking about it I won't stop. This book is truly the loveliest, sweetest romance I have ever read, and I loved every second of it, and I cannot even explain how much I needed this book. So basically this book follows 2 people with a physical disability, and they like meet at a party, they hit it off, and they have a one-night stand. When our female main character, she ends up pregnant after the one-night stand. This is not a spoiler, this is in the blurb, I promise. Basically just follows like what happens after that and how they just like work together like to make it work. I always say my favourite romance books will forever be the most like realistic, simple ones where there's not necessarily big grand gestures other than the fact that they literally just look after each other and they're just kind to each other, and there doesn't need to be some crazy like way that they find themselves together or like crazy third act breakup. It's literally just 2 people like looking out for each other, genuinely just caring for each other. Those types of romances would never be boring to me. Those are the ones that like they are gonna get 5 stars from me every time. I'm just obsessed with them, and it was just so sweet and funny. It just, oh, it actually was just, I said it a million times throughout the reading vlog that I did when I read this, but this book genuinely is pure joy and sunshine, and one of those books that makes me think that like there's hope in the world, people are good, like love is real. Like it genuinely had me in my feels. I loved it so much. Obvious 5 stars, and if anyone has not read this, I genuinely cannot recommend it enough. Like I feel like I have heard loads of people talking about this on TikTok, but still in my mind it doesn't get enough hype, so please give this a read, especially like in the lead up to Valentine's Day. I feel like this is just the sweetest romance book to read. After that we had a little like surprise of a book where I kind of picked it up not really knowing anything about it and not actually understanding how big and famous this book actually is, and this is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I went into Waterstones one day, was looking around for books because, as I've told you guys, one of my goals in 2025 is just to like pick up books purely because I like the look of them, not because I've heard them on TikTok, not because someone recommended it to me, like genuinely just looking for books that I've maybe never seen before, reading the back of it, and if I like it, picking it up and taking it home. It did that with this book, and then someone said to me like, oh, that's the movie that Cillian Murphy's in now, and I was like, oh my god, didn't even realise this was a movie. It's a tiny little book as well, so I had no clue what to expect. This is a story set in the time of the Magdalene laundries, which was Also, like, horrifyingly recently, I'm pretty sure they said the last one was shut down in like only literally just like the 90s or something. Like, it's such a recent event, but essentially the point of the story is literally just to take care of each other. Like, that was kind of what I got from it. Obviously it was like shedding light on what happened, and I felt like when I was reading the book I was kind of like I don't know where this is gonna go. I don't like understand why this is so famous, like, when you're reading it, and then it's like the last few pages it just kind of like fits into place and you just get it. I like can't stop thinking about it. I really enjoyed this book and I would really encourage people to read it. I gave this a 4 stars. I really loved this little book. And then we read another romance book and we read Caught Up by Liz Tomford. So this is the 3rd book in the Windy City series, which you guys know I'm now a huge fan of after reading The Right Move. Caught Up was honestly not as good as The Right Move. The Right Move was a 5 stars for me, but Caught Up was still absolutely amazing. It's basically like a nanny and single dad little trope, and it's just so sweet. Honestly, Liz Tomford writes just an amazing romance. I think all the girls know, like, your frontal lobe is developing when you start enjoying children being in books. I used to always be like, when someone was like a single dad or single mum, I'd be like, get the fucking kids out the book, like, I don't care. But now I think it adds such like a sweet wholesome like aspect to the story, and especially Miller, who's the female main character. Miller's relationship with Max, who is Kai's son, the sweetest thing ever, had me crying. I really enjoyed the fact that it was more than just a romance, and it was just so much about like family and just friendship, going after what you truly want, not just what you feel like, you know, a career you need to be in. I loved every part of it. I would definitely give that a 4 stars because yeah, it was just so lovely and sweet. Okay, and then one of my most recent reads, we read Onyx Storm, of course, as did everyone in the month of January. I just posted a reading vlog on this book. If you've watched that, you will know my thoughts on this, but this book was a 3 stars for me, and it made me think that I'm probably not going to read the following books in the series. I just don't think I care about where the story's going. As I said in my reading vlog, I think Fourth Wing was like an anomaly, like it was something brand new that we hadn't seen before, and that made me love it. It put it in a league of its own. But now that I think that the series is getting more like high fantasy and is put in the same category as like other high fantasy series like Throne of Glass, Red Rising, I just don't feel like this compares. And this is just my opinion. Like, I still think Rebecca Yarros is a great writer, but I just don't think I like her writing high fantasy. I just enjoyed Fourth Wing for what it was, and I think I will just probably leave it at that because I don't think I'm loving where the rest of this series is going. But I honestly still had fun reading this, but by the end of it I honestly felt like I was more disconnected from the story than when I'd started, and I don't think that's a good sign. I think that's a sign that you should just leave the series. And then last but certainly not least, very different for me, but I read a non-fiction book, and this was How to Fail by Elizabeth Day. I don't even want to say self-help book because it's more like storytelling, and one of my best friends, Lara, she got me this book because Elizabeth Day is friends with Dolly Alderton, and so Lara was like, I think they'll have similar writing styles, and I think like it will be the same vibe as Everything I Know About Love, which is obviously one of my favourite books of all time. So I picked this up and I really enjoyed this. Elizabeth Day has a podcast called How to Fail, and it's basically where she interviews like famous celebrities or successful people who basically talk about all the times that they failed and what they learned from it, which I just think is such a great concept, and I think one that we all need to hear a wee bit more, and I definitely needed this, so I really enjoyed it. The book is like split into different chapters of like how to fail at your 20s, how to fail at fitting in, like stuff like that. It was just great and it covered a lot of things. I gave it 3 stars just because like it was not life-changing or anything. Like, it was a lot of kind of the things I've heard before, but it was a fantastic reminder. I really would still recommend it to everyone because it was just a great book. So there we go, those are the 10 books I read in January. I did have a really fun reading month, and I hope that going forward I can continue to have like such fun and like mixed types of reading months like this, because I feel like I read a wide range of books here, and that's probably why I enjoyed it so much. Please let me know what your guys' favourite books of January were, so that I can of course add them to my TBR, keep book shopping, keep buying books. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week for another video.